Somebody crack a joke, hurry up, it's too quiet here.
Yeah.
Come on,
Don't know any
come on,
appropriate
Steve, you don't need any jokes?
Can I remind?
When you
we
get our
recently
attention,
got one of
tell
those
us that that's the wrong number,
things,
it's actually
and that's the
14.
There you
That
go.
would get our attention.
Yeah.
Google.
We're actually going to change our
There's some, like,
recommendation.
really good ones, and they're all sick, but they're
It's
all
a golf rating. that
Yeah,
guys
add
like
another
that.
zero.
they're all really good.
Another 9 million.
I see 7 p.m.
Oh, there we are.
I call this regular meeting of council, Town of Oliver, September 8th, 2020. Call this meeting to order. Are there any late items to add to the agenda?
No, there are not, Your Worship.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as circulated? Councillor Bentamina, Councillor Grace, call the question. Those in favor? Opposed, motion carries.
May I please remind everyone to speak into their mics, please? Thank you.
Okay. Adoption of prior minutes, adoption of August 24th, 2020, regular open council meeting minutes. The motion is the minutes of August 24th, 2020, regular open minutes be adopted as circulated.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Second.
Seconded. Call a question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Committee reports. Chairperson Grace, have you got a report from the committee of the whole meeting this evening?
Thank you, Your Worship. We had a discussion with the about the heritage designation bylaw by Sue Morhoon of the Oliver and District Heritage Society. She had clarified the difference between the heritage registry and the heritage designation bylaw, talked about its importance, benefits to private property owners, property values, etc. So that report was received for information. We reviewed the 2021 council appointments. There were a few that were shuffled around, but for the most part, they stayed the same. So there was a motion passed that council direct staff, that we made those changes to the appointments. We had a bylaw enforcement services update. There was a discussion of issues, challenges, successes, and future projects. We were happy to hear from Ms. Dolbeck that there's been a good relationship struck with the RCMP. There were some concerns discussed about uniforms, so we'll be looking at that at a future date. And that report was received for information. We had a housing grant update from the Director of Development Services, so there's been lots of progress made. There's some info about a new CMHC forgivable loan. Our next update will be in October. It's a very ambitious schedule, lots to do, but it sounds like it's all going quite well and under control, so that was good. We had a discussion led by Mayor Johansson about the recent active racist vandalism on the pictograph on OIB property. So this will be further discussed at a future committee of the whole meeting. We did have an update from the mayor on our response to the OIB. They had a good conversation, the mayor and Chief Louis, and council also made a statement on social media in regards to that unfortunate act. We had a discussion about outdoor burning, whether we should revisit allowing backyard fires. It was sent back to staff for clarification of specifics in the bylaw of what is currently allowed. And then there was a notice of motion that was received to be looked at a future meeting in regards to year-round social housing. And that is the end of my report.
Thank you, Chairperson Grace. Moving to item 2, adoption of August 24th, 2020, Committee of the Whole meeting minutes. Can I get a motion to adopt those minutes, please?
So moved.
So moved. Second. Second, Councillor Grace. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving to water matters. Gallagher Lake Siphon, update and award of contract. I'll ask the Director of Operations to come up. We also have True Engineering here as well.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. So my report is to award the Gallagher Lake Siphon project contract, and True's here to discuss some updates and maybe some of the processes and any questions that council may have about the project, because it's a significant cost to the town, and it's one of our largest projects that we've done. So I'll just touch on a couple things, and then I'll ask Natalie and Steve, who've worked quite extensively on this project for a long time now, mostly Natalie, I think. So she's put a lot of time into this project, and we're close to being shovel ready, and it's kind of exciting that we're finally here. It's been years that we've been working on this, and so just to give council a little bit of an update, and the magnitude of this project's a little larger, so to feel comfortable about awarding a contract to a capable contractor, we put out a request for qualifications back in June, and it went to early July, and we received 13 qualified bids that we went through, and we ranked and went through all the proposals, and then we brought that number down to 4, and those 4 were then qualified to put in their bids and proposals to get the project. And you know what? I think I'll probably put it over to Steve and Natalie, and they can discuss it more, and then we can we'll see what council wants to do on awarding the contract.
Yeah, you're right. This has been Natalie's probably primary project for 4 years, and it's a big one for one of her jobs early in her career. She's been keeping me going in a straight line with keeping everything and all the OIB and all the communication side really dialed in, and she's been doing a great job so far, and hopefully we'll get through to the end. Can I click the slides, or do you have to?
You should be able to.
Okay. And so is this on your screens, or do you guys have to, you have to see it? Okay. So we put together a bit of an update. As you recall, the last time we were in front of you, we were with Beagle Spillin and Associates, and we were presenting 2 options. One was the gravity option with a price, and the other one was the low head siphon option, and we had done the business analysis and chosen this option to proceed with, and it had a $13 million cost estimate associated with it, which made it into the budget. And so we've been proceeding per the recommendations of those reports in doing the NRFP, and we added an RFQ stage to the process. One place where we did vary is that one of the recommendations was to have the town pre-purchase all the pipe for the project. We, in the end, decided not to do that. There was the 2 reasons mainly is that one of the reasons for that was risk of supply for timing, and we determined that the pipe that we thought we were going to use, which was the PVC pipe, was actually in stock in Edmonton, so the risk of supply was not as risky, and there was at least 2 other material that could be used on this project that we wanted to expose the project to in the marketplace. So if we pre-purchased the pipe, that meant we were using PVC. If we left the pipe to be the supply of the contractor, that meant that the other 2 materials could potentially come into play, and it made the other suppliers probably sharpen their pencils as they move forward. So that's the major change that we did from the original recommendations. So after we did the RFQ stage, which John described, we then shortlisted to 4 and had them submit proposals. We then did a similar evaluation against criteria sheet of those proposals and gave everyone a score. The proposals were heavily weighted to price. So of this total score, 65 points was related to price. So H&M would have got 65 out of 65 for that number, and everyone else would have got a slightly different number. You can see that our number 2 recommended contractor there had a score of 81, but actually the third highest price. So it did show that our evaluation did make it possible to change rankings based on what you wrote in your proposal and the quality of your proposal. But what we did notice about our criteria is that if 2 people did a really good job on a proposal, there was no way that it was going to flip because unless of price, because it was such heavily weighted towards price. You see H&M's total score there is 91, which made them the preferred proponent. And we have begun negotiations with them to finalize some finer points of their proposal. We're here today asking you to award the contract to them based on their bid of $9.3 million, but we will be accepting some recommendations that they made to reduce costs, and we plan on just change ordering those so that we have a fixed contractor now, and then as we make minor changes to material specifications for things such as hatch covers and stuff like that, they're pretty minor, but there is some savings. We will continue to make those and issue change orders to this number to bring it down. If there was something that we discovered that we wanted to increase it, I guess in theory we could change order it up, but we haven't seen anything in our negotiations that's going to increase this price. It's mainly ideas to decrease it. From a permitting perspective, there's numerous permits required to construct this project. We've submitted and received several of them. You can see the top 2 are received, and that is how we've been able to commence with some of the clearing activities that you've seen out there. We've been clearing antelope brush and trees. There is some risk on item 3 there, the Water Sustainability Act Section 11 permit. It's not in place, and all 4 of our proponents wanted to commence construction of the pump station this year, recognizing that they couldn't finish it in one season like we were hoping and like we were planning, that it could all be built in one season. So we are going to be doing temporary, we're going to start construction of the pump station this year and do temporary ties to the canal in the spring and actually flow water through a shell of this pump station this year and next summer, and then finish it in the following winter. H&M's proposal was also based on them being able to do the work under Vassaw Creek at the same time as they're doing the pump station. If we don't deliver the Section 11 permit in time for them to do that work, there will have to be a slight cost risk where we have to delay them, and they'll have to do that work the following year. There's no risk to the pump station because the pump station is outside of the the Vassaw Creek wet that is covered by a Section 11 permit. The rest of our permits are much lower risk. There's no risk, or there's low risk that we're not going to get a Section 11 permit. Everything is submitted, and we have a complete submission. We're just trying to actively be a squeaky wheel to try and get that approval in time. We have received our archaeological heritage permit, so we can proceed with all the archaeological work in conjunction with this project. The 28-2 permit is the form of tenure that we have over the OIB lands. That has actually been submitted by the OIB to the federal government, so there's no or low risk that the OIB has any problems. It's in the federal process right now. The OIB Lands Department has said that if we need to get work started and the 28-2 hasn't shown up, they will issue us a permit, like a written letter to allow us to proceed with work, but we do want the formal approval in place. And our side there's a land acquisition cost in our budgets, and our stance is that we're not going to be paying the land acquisition monies until the 28-2 permit's in hand. Utility permits with Fortis, we are laying the pipe close to their high-pressure gas line, in which case we do need a permit, but we're not in there right away by any means. We're just near it, so it's just a standard permit. And the MOTI permit to construct again, we've been meeting with MOTI throughout the project. We're not expecting any delays. Our recent communications with them is within the next few weeks we should have those permits. So from an approval and permitting perspective, we feel we're quite safe. We still just have the Water Sustainability Act permit that we submitted back in August, and even when we submitted it, we thought it was for work a whole year from now. We didn't realize it was going to be for work in 3 months. So we've been becoming more squeaky with that one, and we're confident that we can meet with the people and impress upon them the requirement to get this thing issued in a timely manner. The land tenure, again, with that MOTI permit, when they issue us that permit, they'll also be approving the design of the road across, I guess, the property adjacent to the trailer park. And when they sign off on that land, I guess, acquisition, then we'll be able to proceed with finalizing the dedication of that as a road to construct our pipe in. And the 28-2 is for the lands on the top panel there that I spoke to earlier that is actually submitted already. We took the low bid or the preferred bid, and we tried to do a comparison to the original budget that was presented to you when we chose this option. So the Class B estimate was 11.4 when we presented this to you and we chose this option. And in that budget, the original budget, you can see there was an engineering contingency, and that was a recommendation of the Spiegel-Spillen consultant. And that, if you remember, that was for the known unknowns. Those were for the things that we were going to come up with during detailed design that were going to be added to the project. We've finished detailed design, and we did add some things to the project. The project ended up, the pump station ended up needing a bit more concrete than we had originally estimated. Just once structural got a hold of it, and the size of the structure, it had a little bit more concrete. We added a drain that wasn't necessarily imagined in the original budget, and an overflow. We always knew we'd need an overflow, but the way it ended up becoming, the overflow is actually going to be located at the inlet structure, which wasn't quite what we had thought we were going to build, but it got added to the scope, and those were kind of the known unknowns now. They're in the bid, so the 8.291 million includes all those things that we added, but we're not anticipating anything more to be added. The design's done. The drawings are done. It's been tendered, and so we're okay eliminating the engineering contingency, and then we've updated some of the other costs. The environmental work is looking like it's going to be costing a little bit more than we had anticipated. The antelope brush removal, there's snake fencing that we didn't realize we were going to have to do until we got our SARA permit. So there's some things that have been added to that budget. Archaeological is looking like it's going to be slightly more expensive than we budgeted, and you can see we're carrying a number $15,000 higher. The construction contingency is a safe number up there that says 500,000. That was which was in our NRFP bid documents. We asked everyone to bid with a $500,000 contingency in their price. When I look at what could happen, I don't imagine us eating into that very heavily at all. I mentioned the risk of us not achieving a permit. There'll be a slight cost factor there if we don't get it, but it's not nearly a $500,000 cost factor. It would probably be a $40,000 or $80,000 cost factor if we missed that permit. But we do carry contingency for as it was presented by Spiegel-Spillen, was the unknown unknowns. We just don't know what we're going to dig up, and so we have a $500,000 contingency, but we also have a $290,000 archaeological contingency, and that's again for an unknown unknown that we might dig up from an archaeological perspective. I think we're more than safe with those two contingencies. being loaded on. Land tenure hasn't changed in cost. Engineering, we've carried the same number of costs as a simple percentage of total cost. There has been mention from town staff that the town may consider hiring a project manager, and that's not really up to us to advise. Either way will be part of the conversation, but if there was a manager hired, the fees would come out of that engineering budget, which is a budget. So the three pipe materials that ended up being our project was exposed to in the market were HDPE, which is a fused black product that you may have seen. It has no joints. It ends up being just a continuous pipe end to end. Ductile iron was also carried in some people's bids. The advantage to ductile iron was that it could be buried shallower and required less excavation. And then PVC, which when we had done the original evaluation, we thought would be the preferred product. It had a 100-year life or 80-year design life like the HDPE, and it seemed to be the right price. HDPE was a challenging material to use in that it increased the impact to the frontage road. To install HDPE, you have to fuse it all up on land, and then you dig up one really long ditch and you move this pipe like a snake into the ditch. You do very few joint connections in the trench, and so the impact to all those businesses along the frontage road was going to be significant if we went to HDPE. But the sections kind of through the two right-of-ways on the OIB land and coming down from the canal were better candidates for HDPE, but in the end, there wasn't a price advantage to be using it, even though our indications were that it had a cheaper unit cost to supply. But by the time you brought a machine out to fuse it together, and then did the excavation and tried to deal with accesses to the businesses, it didn't seem to be a better value to the overall project. So the final bid, the H&M price that we're bringing here to recommend award to includes PVC, which will mean it goes in 6-meter lengths, and we can keep the construction zone smaller to keep access to those businesses along the frontage road as we proceed through. There's the question mark there.
Councillor,
So I guess,
Michelle.
best case scenario, we wouldn't tap into the construction and the archaeology contingencies.
Best case scenario.
$700,000.
Best case scenario, we would bring those in at zeros.
Yep. The rest is basically there.
Councillor Mattis?
Thank you, Your Worship. Is there any influence that we can bring to bear through our MLA with whatever ministry we're waiting on for that one crossing permit?
I can't say we need it yet, but that might be something that we can. We were having troubles with the archaeological permit, and sometimes it was just asking for someone that we could have the mayor phone. Was enough to get everything loosened up, and so we will ask that question if it's coming to a risk for sure. We'll make sure that we utilize anything that we have to do to try and get it, but we're not at that stage yet. It's been submitted in mid-August. They're having staffing issues, but once they assign a case person to it, we'll go meet them and impress upon them our timeline issues and our unforeseen timeline issues. But it's a good problem because everything appears to be on budget, and we really want to execute in the shortened timeline, which is still a 2-year timeline. All like you guys have seen all along. Like we'll start this year and we won't finish until we'll need 2 winters to build it, and it'll be the next spring.
Just as a follow-up to Councillor Mattis' question, when you said you were hoping to have that permit in November, December, what's the date that it's too late?
Yeah, we asked that question to H&M last week. We said, what's our drop dead date? Because what we're doing to be proactive is we're going to design the temporary tie to the old canal, assuming it doesn't happen. We're going to sketch that for H&M, and they're going to put a price to it. So before we actually, execute the contract with them, we'll know what the risk cost will be to failure. And they indicated it was probably close to December 1st would be their drop dead date. They're going to order the pipe anyway, and we've agreed that the town will pay for the pipe when it arrives. So there's no cost risk on financing pipe that can't be put in till the next year. But there isn't a schedule risk. It can all go in the next year. It just was in their base bid. They assumed they could do it all this year.
Councillor Schwarzenberger?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just for the people at home and me, the difference of 9.2 million to the 11 million, is that because we're buying the pipe? I don't understand.
Between those two prices.
Yeah.
No, that's two different contractors pricing it two different ways. You'll see that we shortlisted to 4 contractors that we determined were, fully capable of building this project. One of them is local, and that was H&M. The other one, the number 2 ranked, was Emil Anderson. They bid that out of their Kelowna office. IDL was from Prince George, but these are big contractors that we're talking about.
I think what Councillor Schwarzenberg is referring to is the 9 million of the bid price.
And the
then
11 million on the
total
project
price.
cost.
And I think that the bid price doesn't include all of the archaeology.
So you're going to or I'll go back to the budget.
Yeah, that's what I understood.
So the 9 million that we've asked you to award to
First line.
is this 8.29 plus contingency plus GST. GST is a flow-through cost, so we don't account it as a cost, but when we actually award a contract, it includes GST.
So that 500,000 contingency is in that 9 million? So
Yeah.
it's the 8.2 plus the 500,000 plus GST?
Yeah, so you take 9 million and you subtract GST, and then you subtract 500,000 and you get 8.291.
Okay.
And we get the GST back.
Yeah, of course.
Yes, you get 100% of the GST back.
Yeah. I just wasn't sure which, the 8.2 plus what other pieces added up to 9.
Yeah, sorry, it's just the 5 and the 500
Yeah.
there, and then GST.
Okay, thank you.
And I actually did phone your CFO to confirm that it's 100% of the GST back, because we always assume it's that, but if it was a small fraction of the GST, it might add up in 10 million. So, yeah, he confirmed that it was 100% of the GST you get back.
Excellent.
Councillor Machial?
Just curious, of that 8.2, how much is pipe? What's the pipe cost?
Do you have that answer, Natalie? Like the supply cost or the
Yeah,
pipe?
supply. How much is the pipe cost?
That's from IPEX.
Yeah, it's 1.9 for the PVC, and then 310 for the concrete going under Vaso.
About 2.3 million.
Could I ask that you provide those over the mic?
Oh, it was 1.9 for the PVC, is that correct?
Yep.
And 300,000 for the concrete that goes under vessel.
Just curious.
Councillor Schwarzenberger?
Thank you, Your Worship. You also mentioned the steel pipe had a lower cost because you didn't have to dig it down so deep. Does it have less of a lifespan?
Yeah, so the steel pipe, ductile iron pipe, which the material supply cost ended up having $1 million higher material supply cost. But the question, and our contractors evaluated it, was if you have to dig less deep and therefore have less excavation and bedding to take advantage of the much lower cover, could it still be a cheaper alternative? And it turned out it wasn't, but it was worth evaluating.
Certainly.
Councillor Mattis?
On that basis, I would make the motion that council award the Gallagher Lake Siphon project to H&M Excavating Limited for $9,231,423.92 inclusive of GST and contingency.
Seconded, Councillor Machial. Any further discussion, questions, council?
Let's get her going.
I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Let's dig a hole. Let's dig a hole.
Let's dig a hole, put some pipe, lay some pipe.
Moving to item 2, 2020 irrigation turnoff and canal shutdown dates. Director of Operations.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's that time of the year again where we have to determine our shutdown dates and canal diversion shutdown. So this is the first time I've actually proposed 2 different dates. I've proposed the irrigation turn off for Tuesday, October 6th, 2020, and the canal cease diversion on Tuesday, October 27th. And then after talking to my staff and my main operators, rural operators, I said, do we have some flexibility there, just in case seems to be warmer. It's going to be warmer in September and maybe into October, we don't know. And, there's a possibility people may need a little more water before they fully shut down. So we proposed October 13th for the irrigation turnoff and cease diversion a couple days later on the 29th. We can't really go past that. Otherwise, we have people working into the weekend, which is still doable. And from what Steve has told me, and we were just discussing the Gallagher Lake project, that they're actually breaking ground on November 1st. So we want everything out of there and cleared away, and they can get going. Yeah, the only difference is if you look at the history, really going back to the history, I always like to put this table down to show you some of the history, the start dates and shutdown dates, and the 6th is a little bit earlier than most years, so that's why we've proposed the 13th, which is after the Thanksgiving long weekend. And then the 29th is just an alternative to shut down a couple days later, because our low pressure users and people that want late irrigation, generally the grape growers at that time of the year, they'll take the water as long as possibly can. So that's just given a couple extra days. And then when I talk to my staff, we would shut down the canal and do some winterizing. And if the weather was favorable, we'd just leave it for Monday, come back and do the rest of the winterizing in the pump houses. But last year we did run into some cold weather right at the end of October. We actually had a spray filler freeze on us, and there was some minor damages in certain areas. So that's something to keep in mind. And I've also included the number of late irrigation applications, just to give council an idea of how many requests for late water there are. And it's hit and miss, and depends usually when the shutdown dates are. If it's a little later, you'll get less requests, and if it's a little earlier, you'll generally get more, in the 30 range. And if there are any questions?
Councillor Machial.
I'm comfortable with October 6th, Sean, but I think what you mentioned earlier, that we almost have to remain flexible, because every year it's going to be different. Last year it got rainy in September, so we could shut it off at 20th of September and it would have been fine. But if we get a real Indian summer going all the way into the end of September, it'd be nice to have that option for council maybe too, when we get together on the next meeting, and just say, maybe we should leave it for the 13th. What does that do to you and scheduling all that?
You know what, it doesn't really affect us too much. There's
Yeah.
some people are already phoning us in early October to shut them off so they can blow out their systems, and, you know, a lot of the orchards will shut down a little earlier, but we're flexible this year on this. If we could go with the proposed dates that that staff recommended, the 6th and the 27th. And like you were saying, Councillor Machial, if the weather, depending on the weather, and we can always change that in October or late September.
That's what I wanted to know. I think we should set it today at the 6th, but I don't think that that's like a cut and dry decision. If all of a sudden, like I say, we've got an Indian summer going on to the end of September where it's still 25, 28, then we could, you know, you're telling me that we could change our minds and leave it.
Yeah, you just don't want to leave it too close to those dates, though, because we have to put like, we'll do some advertising, but, yeah, and we start taking late irrigation requests and stuff so if we do decide this, yeah, it would have to be late September, and we can get a message out, or PSA out at least, and make those changes and get it out to the public.
That's fine with me. I mean, I'll move the 6th, and as long as we're flexible and, you know, we've got a super hot Indian summer going, then maybe we can change, you know, leave it for an extra week. So I'd move the 6th.
Have a second? Second. Councillor Sidhu. Any further discussion? Councillor Mattis?
Your worship, I'm looking at my calendar. We do have another council meeting this month.
That's right.
Yeah, so that would be the opportunity to change it.
Yeah,
Okay.
we could do it at that meeting. I wouldn't go too late after that, though. Yeah.
Okay.
All righty. I will call the question then. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving to item 3, the water quality report for August 2020. Director of Operations.
Thank you, Your Worship. I can just stay up here for. Okay, sorry, I'm just bringing up the report. So this is the water quality summary report for August. It's there's nothing extravagant that's happened in August, or I know that when I talked to my rural water operators, we were using our max capacity of what we have in our canal for a good portion of August. And just because, and as you can see below, like the temperatures of August were quite warm, it was over seasonal, and very little precipitation, which was under the norm. So those factor in, but then our overall water usage was still quite reasonable. So I think it's just sometimes our peak demands at certain times really maxes out our canal system, and then hopefully now and 2 years from now we won't have to worry about that. Yeah, our overall domestic groundwater consumption was a little bit down than the 7-year average, and same with our surface water consumption for August. And that was pretty much it, unless you guys had any, if council had any questions.
Councillor Mattis?
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have a question. I just think it would be interesting if there was, and I doubt that there's a way that we could ever determine the difference in loss once we put this pipe in the ground. Like, that's going to be a kilometer of pipe, basically. It'd be interesting to know if we're cutting down on evaporative loss or leakage loss, although I know there's really no way of measuring that.
There'll be some savings that way.
One would think, yeah.
I don't know how much loss we have.
Well, when we're at max capacity in another August like we had this year, then maybe we'll actually have some room in the system because we have less loss.
Mm-hmm.
Councillor Machial?
Actually, it's more of a question through to True. Steve, what's our increase in capacity compared to what we've got right now with the fix we're doing? Is it 20%, 10%?
We're running at 70% of capacity right now, of design capacity,
Okay.
with the temporary repair.
So we're going to go to 100%?
We'll be at 100% of design capacity after the project's complete.
which will be March 2022. Which relieves our staff, let me tell you, because we thought we may have to start doing some rolling shut-offs, or people would have to live with reduced pressure because it was getting close on a lot of days.
So I'll move receipt.
Moved. Second. Councillor Mattis. Further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Item 4, 2021 regular open meeting schedule. I will pass this over to the corporate officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Attached is the 2021 regular open meeting schedule for Council's consideration. Each year, the town is required under the Community Charter to publish a list of scheduled regular open meetings for the upcoming year, and it is attached for your consideration, as I said. And I will do a better job, but meetings are to be scheduled the second and fourth Monday of each month, with some meetings are postponed to Tuesday as necessary to accommodate statutory holidays. In previous years, Council had accommodated a summer break schedule in August, and it's proposed to cancel the August 9th meeting. This does leave a 3-week break in between meetings. And in previous years, if there was some planning matters or items that required Council's attention, we would schedule a special meeting. The 2021 UBCM convention is scheduled for the week of September 13th to the 17th, which necessitates the cancellation of the September 13th meeting. This year, if it goes to COVID, maybe they'll change it to a shorter convention, and we'll uncancel that meeting. The 2021 convention schedule is noted for Council's interest as well, and it's noted on the schedule of meetings. On the schedule, I do note now the alternative location of the Frank Venables Theatre. We do have our council chambers, of course, but there could be our location, again, for a longer period. Again, the acting mayor schedule, I made no change to that, but I will take your thoughts if you wish to switch up months to accommodate your own personal and work schedules. So the recommendation before council is that council approve the 2020-21 regular open meeting schedule and proceed with the public notification. Thank you.
Councillor Mattis.
I don't know whether it's ever come up in the past, but with the one council for UBCM, is there ever a need, or has there been a volume sufficient of business to have, say, a meeting on the Friday prior to the UBCM or the Monday following?
Since I've been here in 2015, I don't recall a meeting being scheduled to accommodate the cancellation. Not sure if the CAO recalls it.
I know that we have never scheduled one. I'm just wondering, when we take that extra break there, whether we should just move the date of the meeting as opposed to canceling it altogether. Just asking a question.
Through the chair to Councillor Mattis. In the past, we've basically haven't had a need, like the volume of applications that come forward, there has not been a need to have that particular meeting.
Okay.
Any other questions, council? Can I get a mover of the motion to approve the 2021 regular open meeting schedule and proceed with public notification? Councillor Schwarzenberger, second. Second, Councillor Ventimiglia. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And moving on to item 5, 2020 Council Policy Review, Water. Pass it over to the corporate officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report is before council. These are more water-related policies for council's consideration as a part of the 2020 Council Policy Review. This is the last set of policies relative to water matters that are attached to this report. The policies begin at staff retirement and end with water service extension variance permits. For your interest as well, this is the last set of policies brought to council for review for water matters and general. So we have made it through all of the policies, and we're starting to slowly have some ready to bring back as amended or new policies for your consideration at upcoming meetings. So beginning with staff retirement, that policy was written and adopted by council on November 25th, 1996. Staff's suggestion is to review and bring back to council and to look at a gift staff retirement and staff service recognition policy in combination. As you'll see, I have the staff service recognition below that. That was adopted on April 25th, 1994, and it has the same comment for council's consideration. But I would take any comments on those two policies before we move on to the next one, if you have any.
I don't see any questions.
Thank you. The next policy is the videotaping of regular council meetings. That was written and adopted by council April 10th, 2007. It's to review and bring back an updated webcasting policy, as we have to webcast everything now. And we are getting kudos in the news for our good webcasting experiences for the media and the public. If anybody has any comments on that policy,
Councillor Grace?
Thank you, Your Worship. I mean, I think some things have changed here since this was written. I don't think we're actually on Channel 18 anymore.
No.
In my opinion, I mean, I think space permitting, I have no issue with allowing more than one camera into there. I mean, I think we're trying to be open, so the more the merrier. And I mean, I think a lot more people are probably watching us online than when this was written, so it probably needs a revamp. Sorry, it feels weird not to look at you while I'm talking. That's all for me.
Okay.
Okay.
The next policy is the violence in the workplace. That was written and adopted by council June 26, 1995, and that's to review and bring back to council. We are looking at our respect in the workplace policy currently, and that's ready to come back to council for the next meeting. The Occupational Health and Safety Advisor does note that they should be reviewed concurrently, so that will probably be brought forward to council for consideration and a look. Any comments on that?
Are you going to keep the two policies separate? Or would you roll them into one, like a code of conduct policy, anything like that? And to go further than that, I'm just wondering if that really needs to be a council policy or that's more of an administrative exercise.
Violence in the workplace would probably be more towards our safety program, and it would probably be involved and written with our contractor for our health and safety. So yes, it would probably be an administrative policy over a council policy.
I think we'll be waiting for staff to bring back their comments on each of these policies. They'll be looking at all of them, coming back with recommendations.
Okay.
Thank you for those comments. The next policy that's noted is the water leak adjustment policy. That was written and adopted by council August 9th, 2016. The chief financial officer has provided a comment that given the age of our metering program, he would like to determine the relevance of the policy. I believe that he would probably bring something to council for your consideration to amend or just rescind.
Yeah. That's what I'm assuming is going to happen with all of these policies.
Yes.
They'll be brought back to either amend or rescind, and then we'll review them at that time more so than now.
Yep. And then the last policy, again, is the water service extension variance permits. And again, the recommendation is just to review and bring back to council for comment. That was adopted in 1995. If there's any comments, I can take them.
I don't see any comments. Okay. I'll go into council reports. Anything to report, Councillor Machial?
Nothing to do with council, Your Worship.
Thank you. Anything, Councillor Sidhu?
On September 3rd, I visited a grower on Fruitvale Way. He just had some questions about moving his fill station from the current property over to the next one because he was trying to expand his parking lot for the winery, and it's kind of just in his way now. I referred him to Joseph at Public Works, and I think they're getting it sorted out. And just tonight's meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Sidhu. All righty. Moving to bylaws. Zoning amendment bylaw 1380.15, 380 and 389 Chardonnay Avenue for adoption. Do we have our Director of Development Services here?
No, we do not have our Director of Development Services here, as it's here for adoption. We have received the Ministry of Transportation approval, so there is no further items to be discussed with regards to these rezoning.
Councillor Mattis.
I will move adoption of the zoning amendment bylaw 1380.15 regarding 380 and 389 Chardonnay Avenue.
A second.
Seconded. Any further questions? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving to item 2, permissive tax exemption bylaw 1398. I'll refer to our Deputy Finance Officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. What Council has in front of them tonight is the permissive tax exemption bylaw for 3 readings. The Community Charter allows municipalities to grant permissive tax exemptions for up to 10 years. However, the Town of Oliver's permissive tax exemption policy has capped it to a maximum of 4 years. Traditionally, past councils have granted a 4-year exemption to applicants. However, in the previous year, council decided to grant applications only a 1-year exemption. The main deciding factor for the 1-year exemption was due to the new applicant, Desert Sun Counseling, and the desire for council to reevaluate their exemption in 2020. Section 224 of the Community Charter allows council, on or before October 31st of each year, to adopt by simple majority a bylaw to exempt from taxation the land improvements or both owned and used for various specified purposes. The more common uses and the ones for which the Town of Oliver has provided taxation exemption in the past include used or occupied by a place of public worship, used or occupied by a hospital, used or occupied by a home for elderly citizens constructed with the assistance of aid granted by the province after January 1st, 1947 and before March 31st, 1974. This is the section of the Charter that Kiwanis falls under. Used for charitable purposes, owned or held by an athletic or service club, and used for public service purposes. These permissive tax exemptions provided by council are in addition to the statutory exemptions that the land and improvements may be entitled under Section 220 of the Community Charter. These statutory exemptions are primarily used for churches and only includes the lands of the footprint of the building and the land on which the building stands. This means any land surrounding the building or additional buildings are not statutorily exempt and must be exempted through this process as a permissive tax exemption. My report goes into much more detail on the background of these exemptions, but I will now jump into the current year information on the applications we received. We received 30 applications, 10 of which are considered statutorily exempt under Section 220. It has been past practice of council to provide a permissive tax exemption to the remaining lands surrounding these types of properties. These 10 properties include the United Church of Canada, which is 2 properties, the Synod Diocese of Kootenay, Seventh-day Adventist Church, St. Paul's Lutheran Church Society, the Roman Catholic Bishop of Nelson, Pentecostal Assemblies, Covenant Word of Life, Oliver Kiwanis Senior Housing, which is 2 properties. And in addition to that, there are 2 applications that are classified as heritage properties which occupy town property. In the past, council has provided full exemptions for these properties. They include the Oliver Heritage Society Archive Building, land and parking, and again, the Oliver Heritage Society Museum, land and improvements. Applicants are required to demonstrate that they meet council's objectives and may include cultural and recreational opportunities for adults and youth, promotion of the local economy, local charitable services, enhancing quality of life, economic, social, or cultural, and delivering services that are more effective and economical if they were provided by town staff. In addition, within the town of Oliver's permissive tax exemption policy, the use of land and/or improvements must benefit the community in one of the following ways: provide recreational facilities for public use, provide recreational programs for public, provide programs and/or facilities used by youth, seniors, or other special needs groups, preserve heritage important to the community character, preserve an environmentally, ecologically significant area of the community, offer cultural or educational programs to the public which promote community spirit, cohesiveness, and tolerance, offer services to the public in formal partnership with the municipality. My report goes on to detail all the applications the town received, including the types of services that they are providing and how they meet the criteria of the permissive tax exemption policy. I would like to now highlight one of the applications as it was the focus of discussion in the previous year, which is Desert Sun Counseling. The Oliver location provides affordable housing for Town of Oliver and surrounding areas, which consist of 18 units varying in monthly rental rates of $450 to $660 per month. People who cannot pay are accommodated free of charge. Free of charge on-site services include the men's shed, which operates 5 days a week, 8 hours per day, the women's safe house, and the youth shelter, which is new for 2020. Other off-site services include counseling to the school district, child, youth, and parenting support for the Okanagan Correctional Center, senior support crisis line, and providing help to individuals in crisis. They provide supportive services to the most vulnerable members of the community so that all community members experience enhanced quality of life. The Society's financial statements indicate working capital in excess of $250,000 as of March 31st, 2019. The annual operating budget for the Society is in excess of $573,000. The Society receives monies from the Ministry of Justice, Boys and Girls Club, School District 53, Province of BC, Corrections, Literacy Now, and donations. All of Desert Sun services are provided at no charge or just enough to cover the cost of the program. Any monies received are used on enhancing supportive programs. Desert Sun was awarded a 50% exemption by Council in the 2020 taxation year. During the exemption discussions in the previous year, Council decided to cut the permissive tax exemption bylaw down to 1 year in length from the traditional 4 years. This was solely due to the Desert Sun's application. Council wanted more information before granting any further exemptions to Desert Sun. Most notably, Council wanted to see if BC Assessment granted them a Class 3 supportive housing designation for the 2020 taxation year. For 2020, BC Assessment did not grant the Class 3 designation to Desert Sun, and they remain classified as Class 1 residential. Desert Sun is asking again this year for a 100% exemption, but it remains within Council's power to grant any percentage of exemption or no exemption at all. There are 2 other properties which have requested permissive tax exemptions relating specifically to affordable housing. However, these properties are owned by Kiwanis Senior Citizen Society and were grandfathered in under Section 220 of the Community Charter and are 100% permissively exempt because of this. This year, there were no new applications received for the 2021 permissive tax exemption cycle. In total, we received one less application for 2021. This was due to the Okanagan Portuguese Club no longer continuing operations into 2021. In summary, the 2021 total permissive tax exemptions are estimated to total $97,000. Public notice requirements are prescribed by Section 227. This notice must provide an estimate of taxes that would have been paid over the term of the bylaw if the properties were not exempt by council. A copy of the draft notice, attachment 2, shows an estimate of $435,000 that would be exempt if council grants exemptions to all applicants as requested for the 4-year cycle. No new applications were received for the 2021 cycle. The only other major change for 2021 was the location change for the library, who moved to Anthem Place Mall during 2020. All other applications are comparable to previous years. And with that, I will bring my report to a close. I thank you, Your Worship, and I'll take any questions or comments.
Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just had one question. Item number 4, Oliver Kiwanis Senior Citizens Housing. I'm assuming that that is actually the market, the Kiwanis market, as opposed to the housing, because I think I just wanted clarification there.
Yes, it is the market. They also have the Senior Citizens
Right.
Center, which they're trying to get the land around it, also exempt. But under Section 220, they already get it. So the property that you're asking about, what roll number is that?
You just have it listed under number 4 on your report, Oliver Kiwanis Senior Citizens Housing.
Right, and that's the land surrounding the seniors housing. But in that
No,
case,
well, it says purpose of running a people's market, collecting donations.
yeah. So they also have they also have other properties. So the one that you're asking about, listed as number 4, that was a senior citizens housing, and they're asking for the land surrounding the senior citizens housing to be exempt. But under Section 220, they automatically they get the permissive tax exemption. The other properties they have.
This one was listed under 224.
224.
Yeah,
So that must be then the market.
okay, so
Yeah.
it's listed as housing in our report, but it's actually the market.
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that.
Well, seeing no hands, I will make a comment that I am unable to support the permissive tax exemption the way with the Desert Sun getting 100%. And I think I need to make myself clear. I came up with a number of reasons last year, but I will settle it down to one reason, which is I really truly believe that you should be able to in order to get a permissive tax exemption, you should qualify because you're using the land and improvements and providing that service on those land and improvements. To get a tax exemption for affordable housing and take that money and use it elsewhere in the community does not fit into our policy. It does not sound like the right way because we have no way of knowing how that money is being spent. Now, I know Desert Sun Consulting is a tremendous outfit and does a ton of work for the community, but somebody else could try the same thing or request the same thing, and we may not know how they might spend that money or the quality of the outfit, but we would have created a precedent by allowing people to get a tax exemption and not deliver that those services on the land and improvements. Last year we gave 50%, which I think was a bit of a stretch, but there is a men's shed there is a safe house there, and now this year there's a youth shelter. So for me, I'm unable to support it with 100% tax exemption. And the reason why is I think that you should be delivering all those services through the land and improvements on that site, not spending the money elsewhere in the community.
Councillor Bentamila.
Well, I'll jump in because I don't see any other hands. So when I saw this report come back in its entirety, I was a bit surprised. I thought that last year we had only asked for the Desert Sun portion to come back. But I see a hand and a head shaking, so I'm wrong.
CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. A permissive tax exemption bylaw covers everyone. So we weren't able to separate out Desert Sun from the original bylaw. So that's why it was just a one-year bylaw.
Okay. So then to that, I would say that in my opinion, the way that I read the policy, I do believe that Desert Sun Counseling and Resource meets the criteria for an exemption. I just feel that the work that they do in our community is important. This is a tool that we have to be able to aid them in that, and I think that we want to do all that we can to ensure that the services that they provide remain in the community for our citizens to take advantage of. So I do support it.
Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship. I certainly understand the perspective that you're coming from. I felt the same way last year. I'm not sure that I feel any different this year. I would also put in that if BC Assessment doesn't see them as supportive housing and give them that designation, then I'm not sure that we should see them that way as well. I'm not sure why they are unable to get the designation from BC Assessment. Similar to what the Kiwanis does and the other class, the particular class. But if they're viewed as residential, then I think that the tax should at least stay at the 50% level. I'd be quite willing to support the 50% level as we did last year. Recognizing that, yes, it's more of a burden for them, but I think that in the last year that they've demonstrated that it's not an onerous burden, that it is reasonable for them to pay that amount of tax.
Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Worship. I wish I was better prepared for this because I'm surprised that I'm having to speak in favor. I thought that this was going to be sort of go through without question, but I would certainly also speak in favor of Desert Sun receiving 100% exemption. Obviously, the work that they do in the community is admirable and needed, and even within the land itself, they're providing a service to the community. I mean, if you look at the rates that they're renting to people, I mean, that's far below market rate. So that's, what's happening on that site itself. I mean, I feel that 100% of that site is being used for philanthropic purposes and for the benefit of the community. So I would speak in favor of the full 100% exemption. Thank you.
Councillor Schwarzenberg.
Well, why not? Yeah, I'm afraid I'm going to have to go with the mayor and Councillor Mattis on this one. I think if BC Assessment doesn't see them as Class 3, we're setting a bad precedent that somebody with a Class 1 designation can apply for 100% exemption. So I think we should stick with our 50% exemption unless BC Assessments changes their mind on that one.
So,
Councillor Mattis.
on that basis, I would make the motion that staff be directed to rewrite the permissive tax exemption bylaw 1398 to include a 50% tax reduction for the desert counseling. Desert Sun.
CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through the chair, we do have to have this bylaw adopted by the end of the month. So it might be better if you give it first, second, and third reading as amended by reducing the tax exemption for Desert Sun from 100% to 50%.
I didn't realize we were operating under that type of time frame. It's unfortunate it's this late in the game, but I would absolutely go along with that the council give first, second, third reading as amended by reducing the tax exemption for Desert Sun counseling to 50% exemption land and improvements.
I will second that, but I have a
Second,
question.
Councillor. Yep, Councillor Schwarzenberger.
And this is through the chair to the CAO. So if the whole premise of this is BC Assessment's classification, would it be prudent to do this for 1 year again, or should we do it for 4 years?
CAO.
Through the chair to Councillor Schwarzenberger, you can do it for the 4 years because we do have the ability to amend the bylaw each year if there are some changes or other requests are put forward to us.
Thank you. Councillor Addis.
I would agree with Councillor Schwarzenberger that 4 years would be the way to go. It would be less onerous on all of the other people involved in this, and it would also allow Desert Sun the opportunity to come back and ask us to amend within that period of time.
Any other questions, comments, Council?
I would just make the
Councillor.
comment that I would, I spoke in favor of the 100% exemption, and that would be my preference, but looking around the table, this is clearly the favorite option, and so I will be voting in favor of it.
Seeing no further discussion, I will call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Going to correspondence, I'll pass it over to the corporate officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. The correspondence report is attached for September 8th. There is one item requiring council action. A piece of correspondence received on August 26, 2020 from the BC Restaurant and Food Services Association, Alliance of Beverage Licensees, and the BC Craft Brewers Guild. They're first thanking Oliver for expanding outdoor dining in our municipality and requested support for expanded patio permissions. The recommended, the options for council is that council may wish to consider the three options identified by this group of three. One, to expedite applications for businesses to winterize patios. Two, to approve temporary patios for summer 21 now to enable operators to plan ahead. And three, to create a program for designated pickup zones to enhance countless curbside pickup in the fall and winter, or council may wish to receive and file.
Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Worship. Question through to the administration. Do we have any applications for businesses to winterize public patios, or do we have any temporary patios in place now that we would be allowing for next year?
Through the chair to Director Mattis, we do not have any applications and have not received any other applications in the past with regards to expanding patios onto public property.
Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Worship. Did the Fire Hall Brewery not make an application?
Not to expand onto public property.
Oh, okay. I have another question as well, if I may, Your Worship.
Yep.
Is the request for us to create the program for pickup zones, or would that be up to the individual business, or who is creating that program?
From reading the correspondence, it looks like to create a program for designated pickup zones to enhance countless curbside pickup in the fall and winter.
So that would be for us to do it like outside of pizza places or restaurants to create specific pickup zones.
It may be on corners of Main, for the pizza place, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure that there's a need for us to get involved in any one of these.
Councillor Bentamina.
Yeah, so my first thought when I read this request was that, yes, we should do our best to expedite any applications that come forward if businesses were to want to winterize their patios, or were to perhaps want to look at setting up a contactless pickup station maybe in one of the public parking stalls in front of their business or on a street corner, something like that. We should do our best to facilitate that and get rid of any red tape that may be in the way, but I don't know if there's a need for us to set up the program ahead of time.
Okay. Did you have a question, Councillor Schwarzenberg?
I did.
Okay.
Not a question, but just a comment. I think, as the CAO said, if we haven't had any applications, we would obviously, as we already do, expedite any things we could to make an application go through quickly, or especially if they're looking for a patio for summer of 2021, we could expedite that. But I think I would move we just receive and file.
I'll second that.
Seconded. CEO, did you have a comment?
Just for council's knowledge, over the COVID period when it was first, when restaurants were providing a pickup, then most places were shut down. Staff for some of the other businesses were parking in areas, and we were asked to provide some education and make sure that there was areas cleared in front of businesses to allow for pickup, and we did do that through our bylaw enforcement.
I'm in support of receive and file. If we get any applications or requests for this type of modification or a patio or winterizing a patio, I don't know if we have anyone to winterize, but or anybody has one that they want to winterize, but we would do our best to accommodate, absolutely. We have a motion for, okay, we will call a question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Your Worship. And moving on to, for information items, correspondence from the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch. They've issued an updated policy for the extension of temporary hours of sale and delivery. The second piece of correspondence for information is correspondence dated September 2nd, 2020 from Osoyoos and Oliver Taxi. They're providing notification to the municipality of a pending increase in taxi rates of 2.3%. This notice is for information for local governments, and comment or action is not necessary. The recommended resolution is that the above correspondence and the weekly mail correspondence be received.
Move
So
received.
Move. Second. Any comments? I saw a hand move over there. CEO? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving to reports, the building permit activity report.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did want to provide just a quick update to Council with regards to a piece of correspondence we received at the last meeting and the painted chairs that will be displayed in our community. We will be receiving 3 chairs next week, tomorrow or the following day, and we are looking at installing them in our new bridge park. So 2 chairs are painted by one individual and another one, and the artists are, one lives in Okanagan Falls and the other one is from Oliver.
Nice.
All right, we've got the building permit activity report. Does anybody have any questions? Have a mover to receive?
So moved.
Moved, Councillor Gray, seconded, Councillor Ventimiglia. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving to councillor reports. Councillor Mattis.
Thanks, Your Worship. August 28th, the Bridge Park unveiling. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Mattis. Councillor Ventimiglia.
Thank you. On Tuesday, August the 25th, I attended a public information meeting, a virtual public information meeting regarding the rezoning of the land on which is situated Loose Bay, so to formalize the use of the space as a campground. On Thursday, the 27th, I attended, along with the mayor and a few others, a preview of the upcoming District Wine Village, which is located in St. Coleman Business Park, just north of town. So just a quick update, supposed to open, or due to open late next spring, and I think it's going to be a fantastic addition to the wine region as a whole. And they're just as of, I think, a couple of weeks ago now, including an outdoor skating rink in the plans, an outdoor winter skating rink, so that's also going to be great to add to our shoulder season activities in the south. Friday the 28th was the official opening of Bridge Park, as mentioned by Councillor Mattis, and last Thursday the 3rd was Regional District Committee and Board meetings.
Thank you, Councillor Ventimiglia. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Worship. Wednesday, August 26th, I virtually attended a discussion with the committee in regards to a cold weather shelter for Oliver. Friday, August 28th was the Bridge Park unveiling, as well as today's meetings. And just wanted to mention that I've submitted my video to SILGA, the Southern Interior Local Government Association, as I'm requesting support for a position of Director at Large. So I hope I have Council's support when it comes time to vote. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Councillor Grace. Councillor Schwarzenberger.
Thank you, Worship. I attended the Bridge Park opening, which I thought was a great event. OIB Council and Chief Clarence Louis were there, along with some elders, and just a wonderful event. Too bad more people couldn't attend. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schwarzenberger. August 17th, along with Councillor Ventimiglia, and I think MLA Linda Larson was there, and Mayor Vasilaki from Penticton, among a few others, toured the District Wine Village on August 18th, our Bridge Park unveiling. Yeah, that is a really awesome little place, and those chairs are going to make it even better. I see a lot of people certainly wanting to spend some time sitting there. September 1st, I had a meeting with Chief Louis. Main reason for the meeting was around getting OIB to commit to support for a cast table in the South Okanagan here, which I was able to do, and it ended up being about an hour and a half conversation where we discussed racism and Indigenous relations, among other things. It was some quality time that I actually got to spend with Chief Louis, so it was really good. September 2nd, I had a lunch meeting with Santiago Silly. He's the CEO for Phantom Creek Winery. We had talked about getting together during their grand opening, having some discussion around the legacy project. Phantom Creek would like to do something to help Oliver become a place to stop, just not a place you go through on a destination to somewhere else. Santiago has recently been elected to the board of the BC Wine Institute, and one of the things he's passionate about is getting some wine education into our South Okanagan area. One of the things the wineries are challenged with is getting really qualified people that have a lot of technical knowledge around winemaking. So, and also when I discussed with him around the wine tasting room and our appetite to get a pilot for a wine tasting room, he thought that was a great idea. So I'm going to get him some additional information from our meetings at UBCM last year, and he's going to see if he can leverage any influence he might have through the BC Wine Institute to help us maybe get a pilot. Nice. And as Councillor Grace did, I also shot a video for UBCM up at the Gold Tees, the 9th tee box on Fairview Mountain. If you have a look at it, I thought my golf swing was a lot prettier than it actually is, which explains a lot of the reason I'm losing balls regularly. So. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. Thanks to the corporate officer and the CEO for helping me make that video. Our next meeting is September 21st, 2020, and acting mayor schedule for September, October, and November is Councillor Ventimiglia. Any questions, Tom? Okay. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, Council.